Hello and welcome. Today we will talk about the Age of Explorations. Let's start. Enjoy watching. The Age of Exploration, Expanding Horizons. Introduction, the dawn of exploration. The Age of Exploration, also known as the Age of Discovery, spanned from the early 15th century to the 17th century. It was a period marked by European expeditions to previously uncharted territories, leading to the discovery of new lands, the establishment of trade routes, and significant cultural exchanges. This era had profound impacts on global history, reshaping economies, societies, and geopolitics. Economic and political motivations. The Age of Exploration was driven by various economic and political factors. European nations sought new trade routes to access valuable commodities such as spices, silk, and gold. The traditional overland trade routes to Asia were controlled by Ottoman and other Middle Eastern powers, leading European powers to seek alternative sea routes. The desire for economic gain was complemented by the competition for political dominance. Nations such as Spain, Portugal, England, and France were eager to expand their influence and establish colonies which would enhance their wealth and power. These motivations were often encapsulated in the phrase God, gold, and glory, reflecting the explorers' aims to spread Christianity, acquire wealth, and achieve personal and national prestige. Technological advancements. Technological advancements played a crucial role in enabling the Age of Exploration. Improvements in navigation, shipbuilding, and cartography allowed explorers to venture further and more safely than ever before. Navigational tools. The development of navigational tools such as the astrolabe, which measured the altitude of celestial bodies, and the magnetic compass, which indicated direction, revolutionized maritime navigation. These tools allowed sailors to determine their position and navigate across vast oceans with greater accuracy. Ship design. Advances in ship design, particularly the development of the caravel, a small, highly maneuverable sailing ship, facilitated long-distance voyages. The caravel's ability to sail against the wind and its durability made it ideal for exploration. Larger ships, such as the carrack, were also developed to carry more cargo and withstand long voyages. Cartography. The improvement of maps and charts was another significant factor. Cartographers began to incorporate the latest discoveries into their maps, providing more accurate representations of coastlines and navigational hazards. The use of the Portolan chart, which detailed coastlines and ports, became widespread among navigators. Key explorers and expeditions. Several key explorers and their expeditions played pivotal roles in the Age of Exploration. Their journeys led to the discovery of new lands, the establishment of trade routes, and significant cultural exchanges. Prince Henry the Navigator, a key figure in the early days of the Age of Exploration, was Prince Henry the Navigator of Portugal. He established a school for navigators and sponsored numerous expeditions along the West African coast. Prince Henry's efforts laid the groundwork for future explorations and the eventual establishment of Portuguese colonies in Africa and Asia. Christopher Columbus, perhaps the most famous explorer of this era, Christopher Columbus embarked on his first voyage in 1492 under the sponsorship of Spain. Columbus aimed to find a westward route to Asia, but instead discovered the Americas, opening up a new world for European exploration and colonization. Vasco da Gama, another significant explorer, was Vasco da Gama, who, in 1498, became the first European to reach India by sea, sailing around the southern tip of Africa. His voyage established a direct maritime route to Asia, which became a crucial trade route for Portugal. Ferdinand Magellan, a Portuguese explorer sailing for Spain, is credited with leading the first expedition to circumnavigate the globe. His voyage, which began in 1519, demonstrated the vastness of the Earth and confirmed the interconnectedness of the world's oceans. Impact on indigenous populations. The age of exploration had profound and often devastating effects on indigenous populations in the newly discovered lands. European colonization brought diseases, warfare, and the imposition of foreign cultures, leading to significant disruptions and population declines among indigenous peoples. Disease and demographic changes. The introduction of diseases such as smallpox, measles, and influenza to the Americas had catastrophic effects on indigenous populations who had no immunity to these foreign illnesses. The resulting epidemics caused massive population declines and social upheaval. Conquest and colonization. European explorers and settlers often engaged in violent conquests and colonization, imposing their rule over indigenous peoples. The Spanish conquest of the Aztec and Inca empires, led by figures such as Hernán Cortés and Francisco Pizarro, resulted in the collapse of these advanced civilizations and the establishment of Spanish colonial rule. Cultural exchange and hybridization. Despite the often violent nature of European colonization, the age of exploration also led to significant cultural exchanges and the creation of hybrid cultures. The mixing of European, African, and indigenous cultures in the Americas gave rise to new languages, religions, and social practices. The flourishing of maritime expeditions and discoveries. The age of exploration saw an unprecedented number of maritime expeditions that led to the discovery of new lands and the establishment of trade routes. These voyages were driven by the ambition of European powers to expand their territories, acquire wealth, and spread Christianity. Portuguese explorations and the route to India. Portugal was at the forefront of early explorations, driven by the ambition to find a sea route to the lucrative spice markets of Asia. The Portuguese crown sponsored numerous expeditions along the African coast, which eventually led to the discovery of a sea route to India. Prince Henry the Navigator, although he never sailed on any of the expeditions himself, was instrumental in the early stages of Portuguese exploration. He established a navigation school at Sagres, where he brought together the best cartographers, shipbuilders, and sailors. Under his patronage, explorers mapped the West African coast and established trade relations with various African kingdoms. Bartholomew Dias. In 1488, Bartholomew Dias became the first European to sail around the southern tip of Africa, which he named the Cape of Good Hope. This significant milestone opened the way for future expeditions to India and beyond. Vasco da Gama. Building on Diaz's achievement, Vasco da Gama's voyage in 1497 to 1498 was a landmark in the age of exploration. Da Gama successfully navigated around the Cape of Good Hope and reached the shores of India, establishing a direct sea route from Europe to Asia. This route allowed Portugal to bypass the overland trade routes controlled by Middle Eastern powers and directly access the spice markets of the Indian subcontinent. Spanish conquests and the New World. Spain, motivated by the same desires for wealth and expansion, embarked on a series of expeditions that led to the discovery of the New World and the conquest of vast territories in the Americas. Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus's voyages, sponsored by King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain, were among the most significant in the age of exploration. In 1492, Columbus set sail westward in search of a new route to Asia, but instead landed in the Bahamas, marking the European discovery of the Americas. Columbus's subsequent voyages explored the Caribbean and parts of Central and South America, laying the groundwork for Spanish colonization. Hernán Cortés and the Aztec Empire. In 1519, Hernán Cortés led an expedition that resulted in the conquest of the Aztec Empire in present-day Mexico. Cortés's relatively small force managed to defeat the powerful Aztec civilization through a combination of military technology, strategic alliances with discontented indigenous groups, and the devastating impact of European diseases. Francisco Pizarro and the Inca Empire. Following in Cortés's footsteps, Francisco Pizarro led an expedition that conquered the Inca Empire in the Andes Mountains of South America. In 1532, Pizarro captured the Inca Emperor Atahualpa and, despite receiving a ransom, executed him, leading to the collapse of the Inca state and the establishment of Spanish control over the region. Circumnavigation and global exploration. The desire to explore and map the entire globe led to ambitious voyages that circumnavigated the Earth and provided a new understanding of the world's geography. Ferdinand Magellan. Ferdinand Magellan's expedition, which set sail in 1519, was the first to circumnavigate the globe. Although Magellan himself did not complete the voyage, he was killed in the Philippines. His fleet continued under the command of one Sebastiano Cano. The expedition demonstrated the vastness of the Earth and confirmed the interconnectedness of the world's oceans. It also provided valuable information about the geography and cultures of previously unknown regions. Francis Drake. In 1577, the English explorer Francis Drake embarked on his own circumnavigation of the globe. Drake's journey not only expanded England's knowledge of the world but also challenged Spanish dominance by attacking Spanish ships and settlements along the way. His successful circumnavigation further fueled European ambitions for exploration and colonization. The Dutch and English East India Companies. The establishment of the Dutch and English East India Companies marked a new phase in the age of exploration, characterized by organized trade expeditions and the establishment of colonial outposts in Asia. Dutch East India Company, VOC, founded in 1602, The Dutch East India Company played a crucial role in establishing Dutch dominance in the spice trade. The VOC established trading posts and colonies throughout Asia, including present-day Indonesia, and became one of the world's first multinational corporations. The company's ability to monopolize trade routes and its military prowess allowed the Netherlands to become a leading maritime power. English East India Company. The English East India Company, established in 1600, followed a similar path. It established trading posts in India and Southeast Asia, eventually leading to British control over large parts of the Indian subcontinent. The company's influence extended beyond trade, as it played a significant role in the administration and governance of British colonies in Asia. The Columbian Exchange. The Age of Exploration led to the Columbian Exchange, a period of extensive exchange of plants, animals, cultures, human populations, and diseases between the Americas, Europe, Africa, and Asia. Transfer of goods. The Columbian Exchange introduced new crops and livestock to different parts of the world. From the Americas, crops such as maize, potatoes, tomatoes, and cacao were brought to Europe, Asia, and Africa, transforming diets and agricultural practices. In return, European settlers introduced wheat, rice, sugarcane, and livestock such as horses, cattle, and pigs to the New World. Cultural exchange. The exchange also led to significant cultural interactions and the blending of traditions. European settlers and indigenous populations exchanged knowledge, languages, and customs. African slaves, forcibly brought to the Americas, contributed to the cultural mosaic through their music, dance, and culinary traditions. Impact of disease. Unfortunately, the Columbian Exchange also had devastating consequences, particularly the spread of diseases such as smallpox, measles, and influenza to the Americas. Indigenous populations, lacking immunity to these diseases, suffered catastrophic mortality rates, leading to the collapse of entire communities and civilizations. Economic and social transformations. The Age of Exploration had profound economic and social impacts on both Europe and the newly discovered lands. Economic impact on Europe. The influx of wealth from the Americas, particularly gold and silver, had significant economic effects on Europe. The increase in precious metals led to inflation, known as the price revolution, and contributed to the growth of a capitalist economy. The new wealth fueled economic expansion, the rise of a merchant class, and the development of global trade networks. Social changes. The social structure of Europe also underwent significant changes. The rise of a wealthy merchant class and the influx of new goods and wealth led to increased social mobility and the development of a consumer culture. The demand for luxury goods such as spices, silk, and sugar drove European economies and led to the establishment of colonial plantations and trade networks. Colonial societies. In the Americas, the establishment of European colonies led to the creation of new social hierarchies and systems of governance. Colonial societies were often characterized by a rigid social structure, with European settlers at the top, followed by mixed-race populations, mestizos and mulattoes, and indigenous and African populations at the bottom. The exploitation of indigenous labor and the establishment of the transatlantic slave trade had profound social and economic impacts on the colonies. The scientific and cultural impact of the Age of Exploration. The Age of Exploration was not only a period of geographic discovery but also a time of significant scientific and cultural advancements. The encounters with new lands, peoples, and ecosystems expanded European knowledge and reshaped intellectual thought. Scientific advancements and cartography. The exploration of new territories required advancements in various scientific fields, particularly in cartography, navigation, and natural sciences. The Age of Exploration spurred the development of more accurate maps and a better understanding of the world's geography. Advancements in cartography. As explorers charted new territories, they provided valuable information to cartographers who updated maps to reflect these discoveries. The creation of more accurate and detailed maps facilitated further exploration and trade. The development of the Portolan chart, which detailed coastlines and ports, became an essential tool for navigators. Gerardus Mercator, one of the most influential cartographers of the period, was Gerardus Mercator, a Flemish geographer. Mercator's 1569 world map introduced a new projection method, which allowed for more accurate representation of the Earth's surface on a flat map. The Mercator projection became a standard for nautical navigation due to its ability to represent lines of constant course as straight segments. Navigation and astronomy. The Age of Exploration also saw significant advancements in navigation and astronomy. Navigators relied on tools such as the astrolabe, sextant, and cross-staff to determine their position at sea. The study of celestial bodies and the development of more accurate nautical almanacs enabled sailors to navigate with greater precision. Tycho Brahe and Johannes Kepler. Astronomers like Tycho Brahe and Johannes Kepler made significant contributions to the understanding of planetary motion. Brahe's precise observational data, combined with Kepler's mathematical analysis, led to the formulation of Kepler's laws of planetary motion. These advancements laid the groundwork for future astronomical discoveries and improved navigation techniques. Natural sciences and botany. The encounters with new ecosystems and species during the Age of Exploration had a profound impact on the natural sciences, particularly in the fields of botany and zoology. European explorers documented and collected specimens of previously unknown plants and animals, expanding the knowledge of the natural world. Botanical gardens. The establishment of botanical gardens in Europe facilitated the study and cultivation of exotic plants brought back from expeditions. These gardens became centers of scientific research and education, promoting the study of botany and horticulture. The Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew, established in the 18th century, became one of the world's leading botanical institutions. Hernández de Toledo. Francisco Hernández de Toledo, a Spanish physician and botanist, was among the first to document the flora and fauna of the New World. His extensive work, Rerum Medicarum Novi Hispanii Thesaurus, provided detailed descriptions and illustrations of Mexican plants and their medicinal properties. Hernandez's contributions significantly advanced the understanding of New World botany. Impact on medicine. The introduction of new plants from the Americas also had an impact on European medicine. Plants such as quinine, derived from the bark of the cinchona tree, became valuable treatments for diseases like malaria. The exchange of medicinal knowledge between Europe and the New World enriched the pharmacopoeia and expanded the range of available treatments. Cultural exchanges and the Renaissance. The Age of Exploration facilitated significant cultural exchanges between Europe and the newly discovered lands. These exchanges influenced various aspects of European culture, including art, literature, and intellectual thought. Artistic influences. The encounters with new cultures and landscapes inspired European artists who incorporated exotic themes and motifs into their works. The depiction of foreign lands, peoples, and flora in art reflected the curiosity and fascination with the new discoveries. Renaissance artists like Albrecht Dürer and Peter Paul Rubens created works that showcased the richness and diversity of the natural world. Literary works. The accounts of explorers and travelers also influenced European literature. The narratives of voyages, discoveries, and encounters with indigenous peoples captivated the imagination of readers and provided material for writers. Works such as Richard Hakluyt's Principal Navigations, Voyages, Trafics, and Discoveries of the English Nation compiled the stories of English explorers and promoted the spirit of exploration. Philosophical and intellectual impact. The Age of Exploration challenged existing intellectual frameworks and contributed to the development of new philosophical ideas. The realization that the world was much larger and more diverse than previously thought prompted European thinkers to reconsider their understanding of geography, culture, and humanity. The exchange of knowledge and ideas between Europe and other cultures enriched intellectual thought and promoted a more global perspective. Humanism and the Renaissance. The spirit of inquiry and exploration during the Age of Exploration paralleled the intellectual movement of the Renaissance. Humanist scholars emphasized the importance of observation, empirical evidence, and critical thinking, values that aligned with the scientific advancements of the period. The Renaissance emphasis on the study of classical texts and the revival of learning provided a foundation for the intellectual pursuits of the Age of Exploration. Religious impact and missionary activities. Religion played a significant role in the Age of Exploration as European powers sought to spread Christianity to the newly discovered lands. Missionary activities accompanied exploration and colonization, leading to the conversion of indigenous populations and the establishment of Christian institutions. Jesuit missions. The Society of Jesus, known as the Jesuits, was particularly active in missionary work during this period. Jesuit missionaries traveled to Asia, Africa, and the Americas, establishing missions and schools. Figures like Francis Xavier, who traveled to India, Japan, and China, were instrumental in spreading Christianity and promoting cultural exchange. Cultural syncretism. The interaction between European missionaries and indigenous cultures often led to the blending of religious practices and beliefs. In the Americas, the fusion of Catholicism with indigenous traditions gave rise to unique forms of religious expression. The veneration of saints, the adaptation of Christian rituals, and the incorporation of native symbols and practices reflected the syncretic nature of colonial religious life. Religious conflicts. The spread of Christianity was not without conflict. The imposition of European religious practices often met with resistance from indigenous populations, leading to tensions and violence. The destruction of indigenous religious sites, the suppression of native beliefs, and the forced conversions were among the negative consequences of missionary activities. Global trade networks and economic impact. The Age of Exploration established new global trade networks that reshaped the economies of Europe and the world. The exchange of goods, technologies, and cultures facilitated economic growth and interconnectedness. The Atlantic slave trade, one of the most significant and tragic aspects of the Age of Exploration, was the Atlantic slave trade. European powers established the transatlantic slave trade to supply labor for their colonies in the Americas. Enslaved Africans were forcibly transported across the Atlantic and subjected to brutal conditions on plantations. The slave trade had profound social, economic, and demographic impacts on Africa, the Americas, and Europe. The triangular trade. The triangular trade network connected Europe, Africa, and the Americas, facilitating the exchange of goods and people. European manufactured goods were traded for African slaves, who were then transported to the Americas. In the Americas, slaves produced commodities such as sugar, tobacco, and cotton, which were exported to Europe. This trade network contributed to the economic prosperity of European nations and the growth of colonial economies. Mercantilism and colonial economies. The economic philosophy of mercantilism dominated European thought during the Age of Exploration. Mercantilist policies emphasized the accumulation of wealth through trade and the establishment of colonies. European powers sought to control trade routes, monopolize resources, and establish colonial outposts to enhance their economic and political power. The exploitation of colonial resources and the establishment of plantation economies were central to mercantilist strategies. Conclusion: the transformative legacy of the Age of Exploration. The Age of Exploration was a transformative period that reshaped the world in profound ways. The geographic discoveries, scientific advancements, cultural exchanges, and economic changes of this era had lasting impacts on global history. The encounters with new lands and peoples expanded European knowledge and influenced various aspects of culture, science, and philosophy. The establishment of global trade networks and the colonization of new territories facilitated economic growth and interconnectedness. However, the Age of Exploration also brought significant challenges and conflicts, including the exploitation and displacement of indigenous populations, the spread of diseases, and the transatlantic slave trade. As we reflect on the Age of Exploration, we recognize both its achievements and its complexities. This period of exploration and discovery paved the way for the modern world, shaping the course of history and leaving a legacy that continues to influence contemporary society. The age of exploration remains a testament to human curiosity, ambition, and the enduring quest to understand and navigate the world. The social and economic impact of the age of exploration. The age of exploration not only reshaped the geographic and scientific understanding of the world, but also had profound social and economic impacts. These changes affected European societies, the newly discovered lands, and the global economy. Economic transformations in Europe. The wealth generated from exploration and colonization had significant economic impacts on Europe, leading to the development of new economic practices and the rise of powerful trading empires. The price revolution, the influx of precious metals from the Americas, particularly gold and silver, led to widespread inflation in Europe, known as the price revolution. The increased supply of money reduced its value, causing prices for goods and services to rise. This inflation affected different social classes in various ways, benefiting landowners and merchants while burdening wage earners and the poor. Rise of capitalism. The age of exploration contributed to the development of capitalism. The wealth generated from trade and colonization funded new business ventures and the expansion of markets. The growth of joint stock companies, where investors pooled resources to fund expeditions and share in the profits, exemplified the emerging capitalist economy. These companies, such as the Dutch East India Company, VOC, and the English East India Company, played a crucial role in global trade. Mercantilist policies. European nations adopted mercantilist policies to maximize their wealth and power. Mercantilism emphasized the importance of a favorable balance of trade, where exports exceeded imports. Colonies were viewed as sources of raw materials and markets for manufactured goods. European powers established colonial monopolies, restricting trade to benefit the mother country and protect their economic interests. Impact on global trade networks. The age of exploration established new global trade networks that connected Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Americas. These networks facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures, but also had complex and often detrimental effects. The Columbian Exchange. The Columbian Exchange refers to the widespread transfer of plants, animals, cultures, human populations, and diseases between the Americas, Europe, Africa, and Asia following Columbus's voyages. This exchange had profound and lasting impacts on the global ecosystem and human societies. New World to Old World. The Americas introduced crops such as maize, potatoes, tomatoes, and cacao to Europe, Asia, and Africa. These crops became staples in various diets, contributing to population growth and agricultural diversity. The introduction of the potato, for example, had a significant impact on European agriculture and nutrition. Old World to New World. European settlers brought wheat, rice, sugarcane, and livestock such as horses, cattle, and pigs to the Americas. These introductions transformed indigenous agricultural practices and diets. The horse, in particular, revolutionized transportation, hunting, and warfare for many Native American societies. The Atlantic slave trade. one of the most tragic aspects of the Age of Exploration was the establishment of the Atlantic slave trade. European powers, particularly Portugal, Spain, Britain, and France, forcibly transported millions of Africans to the Americas to work on plantations. The transatlantic slave trade had devastating social and economic impacts on African societies and led to the brutal exploitation of enslaved people in the New World. Colonial economies and labor systems. The establishment of European colonies in the Americas led to the development of new labor systems and economic structures. Encomienda and repartimiento systems. In Spanish colonies, the encomienda system granted colonists the right to demand labor and tribute from indigenous peoples. This system led to the exploitation and mistreatment of Native Americans. The repartimiento system, which replaced the encomienda, required indigenous communities to provide labor for public works and agricultural projects. Both systems contributed to the decline of indigenous populations and the disruption of their traditional ways of life. Plantation economy. The plantation economy, particularly in the Caribbean and the southern United States, relied heavily on slave labor to produce cash crops such as sugar, tobacco, and cotton. The demand for these commodities in Europe fueled the growth of the plantation system and the transatlantic slave trade. The brutal conditions on plantations and the dehumanization of enslaved people had lasting social and economic consequences. Cultural impact and the spread of ideas. The Age of Exploration facilitated significant cultural exchanges and the spread of ideas between Europe and the rest of the world. Cultural syncretism. The interaction between European settlers, indigenous peoples, and African slaves led to the blending of cultures, known as syncretism. In the Americas, the fusion of European, Native American, and African traditions gave rise to new cultural practices, languages, and religious beliefs. The development of Creole languages, the fusion of musical styles, and the incorporation of native African elements into Christian rituals are examples of cultural syncretism. Art and literature. The discoveries and encounters of the Age of Exploration inspired European art and literature. Artists and writers incorporated exotic themes and depictions of foreign lands and peoples into their works. The fascination with the New World and the curiosity about other cultures were reflected in the visual and literary arts. Travel narratives, such as those by Sir Walter Raleigh and John Smith, captivated European audiences and contributed to the popular imagination of distant lands. Intellectual advancements. The Age of Exploration contributed to the advancement of knowledge and the dissemination of new ideas. The encounters with different cultures and the discovery of new lands challenged existing intellectual frameworks and promoted a more global perspective. The exchange of knowledge between European and non-European scholars enriched various fields, including geography, astronomy, and natural sciences. Challenges and conflicts. While the Age of Exploration brought significant advancements and opportunities, it also led to numerous challenges and conflicts. Impact on indigenous populations. The arrival of Europeans had devastating effects on indigenous populations in the Americas. The introduction of diseases such as smallpox, measles, and influenza, to which Native Americans had no immunity, resulted in catastrophic population declines. The imposition of European rule, forced labor, and cultural suppression further disrupted indigenous societies. Colonial rivalries, the competition for colonies and trade routes led to conflicts between European powers. The struggle for dominance in the New World and Asia resulted in wars and territorial disputes. The Treaty of Tordesillas, 1494, and the Treaty of Zaragoza, 1529, were attempts to resolve conflicts between Spain and Portugal by dividing newly discovered lands between them. However, rivalries continued to shape colonial policies and military engagements. Resistance and rebellion, indigenous populations and enslaved Africans resisted European colonization and exploitation. Rebellions and uprisings, such as the Pueblo Revolt, 1680, and the Haitian Revolution, 1791 to 1804, challenged colonial authority and sought to reclaim autonomy. These acts of resistance highlighted the resilience and agency of oppressed peoples and their efforts to assert their rights and cultures. Conclusion: the enduring legacy of the Age of Exploration. The Age of Exploration was a transformative period that reshaped the world in profound ways. The geographic discoveries, scientific advancements, cultural exchanges, and economic changes of this era had lasting impacts on global history. The encounters with new lands and peoples expanded European knowledge and influenced various aspects of culture, science, and philosophy. The establishment of global trade networks and the colonization of new territories facilitated economic growth and interconnectedness. However, the Age of Exploration also brought significant challenges and conflicts, including the exploitation and displacement of indigenous populations, the spread of diseases, and the transatlantic slave trade. As we reflect on the Age of Exploration, we recognize both its achievements and its complexities. This period of exploration and discovery paved the way for the modern world, shaping the course of history and leaving a legacy that continues to influence contemporary society. The Age of Exploration remains a testament to human curiosity, ambition, and the enduring quest to understand and navigate the world. Key figures of the Age of Exploration. 1. Christopher Columbus, 1451 to 1506. Role: explorer and navigator. Contribution: Voyages to the New World. Christopher Columbus, an Italian navigator sponsored by the Spanish crown, embarked on his first voyage in 1492. He aimed to find a westward route to Asia, but instead landed in the Caribbean, marking the European discovery of the Americas. Columbus made a total of 4 voyages, exploring parts of the Caribbean, Central America, and South America. His expeditions opened the way for the extensive exploration and colonization of the New World by European powers. Impact on European exploration. Columbus's voyages had a profound impact on European exploration and colonization. His discovery of the New World prompted other European nations to explore and establish colonies, leading to significant cultural, economic, and geopolitical changes. 2. Vasco da Gama, circa 1460 to 1524. Role: explorer. Contribution. First voyage to India. Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese explorer, is best known for his pioneering voyage to India. In 1497 to 1498, he sailed around the Cape of Good Hope and reached the shores of Calicut, modern-day Kozhikode, in India. This successful expedition established a direct sea route from Europe to Asia, bypassing the overland trade routes controlled by Middle Eastern powers. Expansion of Portuguese trade. Da Gama's voyages significantly expanded Portuguese trade and influence in Asia. The sea route to India allowed Portugal to establish a lucrative spice trade, enhancing its economic power and leading to the establishment of a Portuguese colonial empire in the Indian Ocean region. 3. Ferdinand Magellan, circa 1480 to 1521. Role: explorer and navigator. Contribution. Circumnavigation of the globe. Ferdinand Magellan, a Portuguese explorer sailing for Spain, is credited with leading the first expedition to circumnavigate the globe. In 1519, Magellan's fleet set sail from Spain, crossing the Atlantic Ocean, navigating the treacherous strait at the southern tip of South America, now known as the Strait of Magellan, and crossing the Pacific Ocean. Although Magellan was killed in the Philippines, his expedition continued under the command of one Sebastiano Cano and successfully returned to Spain in 1522. Impact on global exploration. Magellan's voyage demonstrated the vastness of the Earth and confirmed the interconnectedness of the world's oceans. It provided valuable information about global geography and paved the way for future exploration and trade routes. 4. Hernán Cortés, 1485 to 1547. Role: conquistador. Contribution. Conquest of the Aztec Empire. Hernán Cortés, a Spanish conquistador, led the expedition that resulted in the conquest of the Aztec Empire. In 1519, Cortés and his small force of Spanish soldiers, along with indigenous allies, marched to the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan, modern-day Mexico City. Through a combination of military technology, strategic alliances, and the impact of European diseases, Cortés was able to defeat the powerful Aztec civilization and capture its emperor, Moctezuma II. Establishment of Spanish rule. Cortés's conquest of the Aztec Empire marked the beginning of Spanish colonization in Mexico. The fall of Tenochtitlan led to the establishment of New Spain, a significant Spanish colony that became a major center of wealth and power in the Americas. 5. Francis Drake, circa 1540 to 1596. Role: explorer, privateer, and naval commander. Contribution. Circumnavigation of the globe. Sir Francis Drake, an English explorer and privateer, is best known for his successful circumnavigation of the globe between 1577 and 1580. During this voyage, Drake explored the Pacific coast of the Americas, claimed territory for England in present-day California, and engaged in privateering activities against Spanish ships and settlements. Defeat of the Spanish Armada. In addition to his explorations, Drake played a crucial role in the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588. As Vice Admiral of the English fleet, He helped to repel the Spanish invasion, securing England's naval dominance and contributing to its emergence as a major maritime power.